Sampraday. We have Juliana Rohar, who is coordinator of arts and team leader with Swift Watch. And we have Advocate Smruti Kodari. From the Goa Federation of Women Lawyers. We also had, as part of this session, Samira Pati, who is the chairperson of the Goa State Commission for Protection of Child Rights. But I am sorry to say, like the morning where the official speaker chickened out, or I do not know what happened, because he didn't even care to inform why he hasn't come, or that he's not coming. As against that, the chairperson has informed that she's not coming, but not cared to say, ask somebody else to represent, because after all, the commission is not anybody's private body, it's an official body, and they ought to be here. So this is something I think, as has been pointed out in the morning, we need to take serious note of that. The people from the officialdom are not taking their responsibilities as seriously as they ought to take. And it's something I think this meet should take serious note of, and we could move from there. So I will ask Juliana to first introduce herself a little bit about what she does and from where she's coming when she's talking about the processes which a child has to go through through the legal system for getting justice. What are the issues that are faced and what can be done?
Okay. Basically, like as Albertina said, is that I'll be talking about the process. I'm not going to be talking about the law or any sections of the law. What I will be sharing is during my process of work with victims of sexual abuse, okay, what are the different, my experiences with them. Okay, and what are the things that has happened in the process of work? Okay. If you look at it, I think in the morning of the last session, there was a lot of discussion on the impact, rather on the psychological aspect of a victim of sexual abuse with focus to incest. If you look at it, any victim of sexual abuse, okay, the effect that it has on the child, on the victim is one, there is a lot of fear in the person. There's a lot of fear in the victim, in the child, because the offender or the perpetrator would have told her not to disclose this to anyone. She's fearful, she's afraid that people will not believe her. She has a fear that she's not going to be accepted. Along with fear, she also goes through a lot of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame once again because she most of the time is blamed for the abuse to happen. The offenders, the perpetrator blame her because of her the abuses happen. When it is the case of family, the family members blame her. Our society blames the girl, blame the victim for the abuse to happen. She also goes through a feeling of isolation. This isolation happens again when it is victim of incest. She feels that nobody is there for her. Nobody understands her. She is different from her siblings. She feels a sense of being all alone and no one being there for her, and sometimes she is referred to as a problematic child of the family. She also goes through this whole feeling of, in this entire process of when the abuse happened, she goes through a lot of grief and sadness. Sadness because nobody is understanding her. Sadness because who is the person who has abused her? It is someone whom she loves, someone whom she trusts, that this person has done such a thing to her. And the most important thing that the victim goes through is that she has been betrayed. Betrayed by whom? Betrayed by people who are supposed to protect her. Let it be her family, let it be the school, let it be the community that she lives in. All these people have failed to protect her and to save her. Now, when we look at this, okay, when an abuse happens, when a victim, when a child is sexually abused, okay, one is that the abuse has to be reported and we need to activate the criminal justice system. Okay. Now, what do you mean by activating the criminal justice system? In the process of activating the criminal justice system, we need to inform the law enforcement agency. That is, we need to inform the police. The victims, a complaint is lodged. there's a process in which the complaint is registered, it's lodged. The statement of the victim is taken. The victim is sent for medical. I'll share this with an example. Basically, there was a girl, okay, who came to complain about the abuse that has happened to her. She had to repeat this on and on. Okay. A girl came to my office. In the office, she told me कि दीदी मेरे साथ इस आदमी ने ये किया, ओके, और मेरे को रेप करने को कोशिश किया, ठीक है? So I sat, I listened to her, I took the entire detail. Then I went and I informed the PI. The PI, along with the PSI, sat and asked the girl again. Okay. She again had to repeat the entire thing. After the PI and PSI finished, the DYSP came. She once again had to say what has happened. Now imagine what the child is going through here, the psychological disturbance that is caused, the same abuse that has happened, how many times she has to report it, how many times she has to keep sharing about it. Then the whole thing comes of lodging a complaint. My whole question is, isn't the state responsible to lodge a complaint? There was a girl, in another case, a minor girl who ran away with a minor boy. Okay? They ran away and they came back, they went out of Goa and came back after 3 months. Upon their return, we asked the girl, why did you run away? She said she ran away because her mama, her uncle, tried to molest her. Her mama molested her and tried to rape her. When this case came up, okay, when it came to mama's molestation and attempt to rape, the family became very hostile towards her. Blamed her for everything. While all this drama was going on, the police didn't intervene. The police was more bothered with the first case of kidnap and rape. Okay? When it came to this whole hostility of the family, the girl being blamed for this, the police did find it much of its responsibility. And then the police very conveniently said the family of the victim has to lodge a complaint. The victim obviously was totally traumatized and disturbed with the way the hangama was going on with the family. So there was no choice but left for us to lodge the complaint. Again, the whole thing of when it comes to lodging a complaint, the question of jurisdiction comes. I think not only in Delhi case, in Goa also we have this problem of jurisdiction. Again, there was a girl who ran away from home. She ran away from home because her neighbor had raped her. He raped her and he threatened her that don't tell anyone, agar tum bologe to dekho kya karti hu. So she ran away. She took shelter in some bus stop, in some shed, and there a truck driver raped her. When this was told, we went and we shared with the PI. The PI very conveniently said is that here, this is of two jurisdiction. Okay? So the girl had to tell of one case. That is of Vasco police, she had to tell of the first boy at Vasco police station. The second happened at Vedna police station, so she had to go and tell again at Vedna police station. And this girl was 6 months pregnant. So imagine what the person goes through. Now, in this entire process of sharing the information of the complaint being lodged, it takes nearly 3 to 4 hours. But it does not end here. Then she has to go for medical. The medical time again depends on the availability of the doctor. If the doctor is there, it will get done within 2 to 3 hours. If the doctor is not there, she has to wait. And I think none of us like to wait in a hospital. And that too, the hospital which is close to the morgue. When she goes for a medical, she has to go to the forensic department which is close to the morgue. In fact, I myself, when I first handled one of my first case, I didn't know that the morgue was there. The policemen, while they were talking, they said, "Bhoot aaya, bhoot aaya." Okay, imagine it's at night. Okay, you go through all this bhoot aaya, phone hai, they got a dead body which has gone to the morgue. The child is meant to wait till the doctor comes. And then, a victim again of sexual abuse. Imagine what she is going through, and a male doctor has to examine her. The male doctor examines her, and then the male doctor also gives advice. The advice of the doctor is, why are NGOs here? They should not be here. My whole question is, we have seen that when a victim is sexually abused, along with the victim, her family too, they get disturbed. If it is the case of family members, then what happens? They keep blaming the girl, taunting the girl, that she is responsible, what she has done, kya kiya. Okay? And if family members are not involved, the parents themselves are shocked with what has happened. We somewhere feel that presence of NGO is important. The social worker, the counselor needs to be with the victim and the family member to enable them, okay, to not to be so traumatized because the process takes so long. Okay. Also, we have this whole thing of after the medical is done, then the question arises is where does the victim go? Again, most of the time when the abuse happens, influential people are involved in this. Okay? Or a person is from the community. Now think of getting the victim back to that place where the abuse has happened. Imagine what happens to her. So the whole question of safe place, safe shelter arises. And then, as in the morning someone mentioned, we have Apna Ghar. As soon as you take Apna Ghar's name, neither the police wants to send, neither the girl wants to go, and neither the family members wants to send them. Apna Ghar today, what is it? Today Apna Ghar has become a place whereby a victim is sent, provided shelter, statement de do, release kar do. Where are the services at Apna Ghar? Imagine a child who has been sexually abused, she requires counseling, she requires certain therapies, she requires someone to just listen to her, for her to ventilate. None of that is there at Apna Ghar. And then in Apna Ghar we also have the children, we have the delinquents and the victims in the same premises. You have the observation home and the children's home in the same premises. And then what happens is that the family members raise an issue that how can my daughter be there when the accused is also there. Those who go to Apna Ghar, we know is that it is in separate premises. But those who do not know about Apna Ghar, they feel that everybody is together there. All the children are together. Obviously, the girl's whole thing of abuse, it's not that safe shelter, she's carried on in life and it's come to an end. At the time of trial, the trial, most of us who handle cases, we know the trial comes after a period of 3 to 4 years. Imagine a victim, after all this abuse, after all this entire episode, whatever of her medical statement, safe shelter, when the trial proceeding comes up, when her deposition, when she has to go and depose, it happens after 3 to 4 years, and then she has to again repeat everything. And then we see that how it causes disturbance to her, yeah? Because somewhere she has moved on in life. Certain times she takes services, certain times she has resolved certain issues and she has moved on. What we are saying is, we are saying is that processes are important. We need to have these processes. Okay, but we need to see how this process is more victim friendly. It should not be in the name of justice, we are causing trouble to the victim. We need to ensure that at each of this stage, in each of these steps, there are certain systems in place, there are certain protocols, there are certain guidelines which is more victim friendly. We need to see that, again our morning discussion, which Anita's topic of discussion was the victim assistance unit. It has to be functional. We need to have a victim assistance unit which is functional and which has professionals in there. When it comes to medical facilities, we need to see how the entire medical service for the victim is in one building. Presently, when a victim of sexual abuse has to go for medical, she goes to one block. If the gynec is not there, then she has to go again to another block, and then she has to go for the blood report to another block. Why don't we have everything in one premises itself so that it becomes much more victim friendly for her? Most important is we need to ensure that they are female doctors who handle cases of sexual abuse. After all this trauma, after whatever abuse has happened, when it comes to medical, it is being done by a male doctor. We need to ensure that recording of statement of the victim is in a friendly, child-friendly manner. Anyone who is involved, who influences the victim, should not be allowed to interact with the victim. The victim should be allowed to give her statement when she wants. We also need to ensure that those who are hostile towards the victim, those who threaten the victim, those who blame the victim, action should be taken against them, including the parents. The last point we need to see is that if the police has information, the police should register a complaint and not wait for family members or the victims for NGOs to lodge a complaint. Thank you.
I think Juliana has raised an important point of the whole, what we call secondary victimization. That means a re-victimization that happens to the survivor of the crime by going through the whole legal system, through the whole justice system. So it's like she's first abused, and then she's abused by the system, by the way it treats her and deals with her. And that's therefore the need to have sensitive systems right through. She's also raised another significant point as to who is to lodge a complaint and what happens in terms of what are considered as safe cases. I would say we are talking of safe spaces, we are talking of safe places for safety for children. But here's the question of how the police choose to book what are considered safe cases. They're not wanting to get into the incest, they're only booking certain types of cases. And the issues that arise when certain people happen to be the perpetrators who have a certain kind of clout. And again, this also happens in terms of who's the victim. So what response do we have when the victim is of a particular background as against when the victim is of another background? After all, for quite some time, it's not as if rape and sexual abuse is happening just now. It has been happening for quite some time. I remember that at the Patong EDC complex, there was a 4-year-old migrant girl who was raped. But that did not stir our society's imagination, because, or not imagination, the response, I mean, to act on it. That is because we are often conditioned by who is the victim, who is the perpetrator. These are, I think, issues that we need to introspect on for ourselves. Sorry, you haven't been able to hear me. Anyone? I think I'm loud enough. Yeah. The last point that Juliana emphasized on is the whole thing of the need for for one-stop point in terms of the victim assistance unit. That needs to be a one-stop point. That's another, because it's again a whole victimization. If the person has to shuttle from here to there, tell this person a story, tell that person a story, tell the third person a story. In different jurisdictions, we shuttle from one place to another. Now we move on to Advocate Smriti Kothari. She's from the Goa Federation of Women Lawyers. Incidentally, after the Justice Verma committee was set up, there was a meeting organized by Saad Angan with the Goa Federation of Women Lawyers, and several suggestions were put to the Verma committee. I'm also happy to inform you today, because a meeting at a historic time, because the committee's report was just out yesterday, that a lot of our recommendations have been taken into account in the report, and they have actually given us a hearing and actually taken our responses on board. Most of them. I mean, it's not like we have everything 100%, but at least to a great extent. But I think we should not stop with that, because it's just the Verma committee's report, and then the report goes to the government, and it's the parliament that has to accept it when it comes to changes in the laws. There has to be a political will, and there has to be a community will. So that is the part that we will have the responsibility to follow up on. Over to Advocate Smriti Kothari.
Thank you, Albertina. Here we are to talk about the children. Children are among the most vulnerable sections of the society. Sexual assault on children in Goa have increased considerably with respect to reported cases only. There may be unreported cases also. child sexual assault is committed by the stranger or a known person, or it may be caretaker, babysitter, family member, teacher, or a neighbor. The child reaction to sexual assault can vary depending on the child's age, identity of the offender, and the frequency and duration of the assault. We have good laws, but what is lacking is proper implementation and speedy justice. The Constitution of India imposes responsibility on the state to ensure that the needs of the children are met and their basic human rights are protected. The Constitution even guarantees all children certain rights. Some important are the right to free and compulsory elementary education for all children, right to be protected from any hazardous employment, right to be protected from being abused and forced by the economic necessity to enter the occupations unsuited for their age, right to equal opportunity and facility to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom, dignity, and guaranteed protection of childhood and youth against exploitation. One of the acts being implemented for their safety is Goa Children's Act 2003, was enacted to protect, promote, and preserve the best interest of children in Goa and to create a society that is proud to be child-friendly. The Act has provided certain rights to children. One of these, Section 3, the state shall ensure that the children are protected from child abuse, sexual offences, child trafficking, child prostitution, and violation of their rights against exploitation, and they are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in the conditions of freedom and dignity. This Act also includes certain sections wherein Section 4 provides for the counseling facilities by the trained person shall be provided to the child in the school, and all schools shall preferably include the child rights and gender justice in their curriculum. This has not been implemented in all the schools in Goa. In the wake of the recent rape of a 7-year-old girl student from Vasco, the government has now engaged 40 counselors who will undertake the sensitization and awareness program in schools around Goa for both teachers as well as the students. Now there is urgent necessity of sensitization of parents also. Now the Children's Court was constituted in Goa in 2004. But we see there is high pendency of cases, about rising to 300, which has to be reduced. The Children's Court has to hear the cases on the daily basis, which is not so today. We don't have a permanent judge at the Children's Court. Now the Chief Minister has now written a letter to Chief Justice of Bombay High Court requesting him to appoint a special permanent judge at the Children's Court to speed up the pending cases. It is also a urgent necessity that a victim protection unit to be constituted to protect the victims of abuse. There is also necessity that a victims assistance unit should be set up in each district to facilitate the child who is a victim of child abuse to deal with the trauma of abuse, and also appear before Children's Court to give the testimony or any other authority so that she can tell her what has happened properly. Now the village child committees have been appointed, but they should be increased and it should be functional and effective, which is not so at the present condition. The another act is a Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children's Act 2000, which deals with juveniles, the children, persons who are not completed 18 years, who are in need of care and protection and who are in conflict with law. The Juvenile Justice Act mandates that all shelter and children homes have to be registered. It is not only after only after their registration that they can allow house inmates. In Goa, there are various children homes, then shelter homes, daycare units, night shelters which are not registered and without inadequate infrastructure. Hence, all children homes have to be registered, and this has to be implemented. Because register homes are monitored by the Child Welfare Committee to see that the child's best interest is looked in the children's home. Now, another act is what the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act 1986, which prohibits employment of children below 14 years in certain hazardous processes and regulates it in certain other non-hazardous processes. Now, all forms of domestic employment, meaning employment in household, doing work of domestic nature, other temporarily, then permanently, piece-rated or part-time jobs also. All forms of employment, meaning which also includes rag picking, then plastic bag selling, running errands, carrying loads of choppers and all, etc. This also has to be stopped. The children who have been identified as child laborers should be freed immediately from their workplace and placed in a regular children's home or in a state-run institution which are identified under the plan of action. And the state should also ensure that a satisfactory rehabilitation program has been provided for them. It is duty of every family and the society and the state to ensure that the rights of the child are not violated and there is no child labor. Though there are laws against it, we still find that children are engaged in selling tea, employed on the shacks, employed on dhabas, then child labor on the eateries, restaurants and shops in Goa. Then employment in children in these occupations make them vulnerable to emotional, sexual, financial and physical exploitation since they live with the family or even if they are daily workers. They are exposed to violence and maltreatment. Because of this, they shouldn't be working there. In a hazardous occupation, they are exposed to health problems also. Tourism in Goa have also given rise to child labor in Goa. Now we have another aspect also where the infrastructure of setting up of forensic laboratories in every district hospital for speedy forensic test of sexual assault or rape victims has to be improved. Due to delay in conducting the medical test, rape and sexual assault cases are often not probed properly. Another aspect we have to look into is what police has to be trained, educated and sensitized to deal with the child victim of any crime, and this should be at all levels, whether he will be police constable or DGP or anyone, it should be done. The police should carry out the investigation which should be watertight, not leaving any loopholes for acquittals. There should be highest probability of conviction. Then only to a certain level this sexual assault on children can be stopped. There should be proper coordination between various police stations of the area. Any police complaint, if anyone goes to file a police complaint at the police station, the police cannot refuse to register any complaint of the victim. This has been also recommended by in the Justice Verma committee report. Then there should be CCTVs in schools and security also has to be tightened in the schools. When we are discussing about being safe in buses, roads, railways, platforms, etc., we do not expect our children, that our children will not be safe in schools where we leave them for studies and with the full trust on the teachers or the headmistress of the school. Though laws are passed for the protection of the children, but it is our duty as a society also to see that we create an environment for the development and the safety of children. There's been another issue also, that is trafficking in women and children has become increasingly lucrative business, especially since the risk of being prosecuted is very low. women and children do not usually come to the brothels on their own will, but are brought to highly systematic, organized, illegal trafficking networks run by experienced individuals who buy, transport and sell their children into prostitution. The traffickers tend to work in groups, and children being trafficked often change hands to ensure that neither the trafficker nor the child gets caught during the transit. So different groups of children include gang members, police also may be involved, even politicians, all working as a nexus. So this nexus has to be broken. There has been another issue has been raised about the missing children. The missing untraced children based on the police records is a matter of a deep concern. For the government, and it requires a systematic attention of the central and state government with the help of the police administration to locate and find the missing children. As missing children are exposed to high risks of exploitation, vulnerable and fall prey to crimes, abuse, including human trafficking also. So it is therefore necessary that effective steps should be taken for the investigation of cases relating to missing children and tracing their children. Here the Justice Verma Committee report has been submitted yesterday. They have not lowered the age of the juvenile. At present, it is 18. And they have also recommended that every district magistrate should prepare consensus of missing children. And they should also stop the youth-teasing, sexual harassment and stalking from the society has to be made as a criminal offence. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Smriti Badani. I think she's nicely taken us through, in a short span of time, through all the various provisions of the law. And the more we talk of what provisions there are in the law, the more we realize how there are provisions, but they're not being followed. And that's something I think we, as today's meet, should take a very serious note of. She's talked so many things about the children's homes. We know now that in so many cases in the homes, if you remember the Freddie Beats case and then onwards, there are times when the homes themselves are responsible for abuse of children. And what are we doing when the custodians of the law themselves are responsible for abuse? Earlier, Bernie had talked of this, the police who picked up the children as children in conflict with the law on the accusation of theft and ended up abusing those children. I mean, the entire system collapses if that be the case. So I think there has to be that there is, the law already recognizes that when it's custodial, it's considered an aggravated sexual assault. But I think there needs to be a loud voice that it is the custodians themselves that have to be held very seriously accountable, that something needs to be done when these cases come up. It's true that it is considered aggravated sexual assault, but there has to be the possibility for people to come forth and talk and complain about this aggravated sexual assault, the environment to do so. It should not be. I still vividly remember that when Bernie had spoken, it was at a meeting like this. After at that time something else had happened, some major case had happened. I do not remember which case that was, and there was a meeting like this, and she was on some committee at that point of time, and she had, because she was on that committee, she had access to know and be able to talk to the children also. So because she spoke at this, they forgot about the case, but the police were extremely annoyed that she should speak about it in a public forum. So rather than be concerned that their personnel are doing this, they're bothered about somebody making it public. So this is something we really need to talk about very seriously. This whole hush when something happens, and again the whole thing of preserving the honor, whether it's of the police or whoever it is, and therefore hushing it up. This also happens in educational institutions, and we all need to recognize that there is honor in dealing with the case. There is no honor in hushing up and sweeping the case under the carpet in our institutions, but in dealing with it and saying we stood up against it, we voiced our concern about it, and we chose to do something about it. One of the things that constantly comes up in all these cases is about the language of the law, and this has also come up in various presentations. The children have their own language. Yes, we should try to have a kind of standardized language for when it comes to the law and when it comes to body science education or sexuality education. But the reality is that the children have their own language, and I know the kind of questions that get asked of people who are abused, of whether it's women or children who are sexually abused, and there are colloquial expressions also. I still remember that when I was doing this case of when I was assisting the prosecution, and the opposite lawyer was arguing at the end of the whole case that the word boobs was used, and that there is no such word, and therefore it's not sexual abuse, because it would, meaning that word is not a recognized English language word. So there was this extensive argument. Fortunately, I would say, and I would like to take on the most untouched bastion, and that is the judiciary. Fortunately, in that case, the judge was sensitive. But in most cases, let me tell you, the judges are absolutely insensitive, and they choose to go by the people in power. In most cases, even those seemingly progressive. And we have had instances where the judges are talking about, child sexual abuse by the family. No, it's a false case, and they're only talking about false cases. Come on, in every situation you can have a false case. I'm not saying that every single case is true, but if you are starting with this note and your whole demeanor and your presentation is whenever you go anywhere to talk about false cases, something is seriously wrong with judges who talk like this. Because then they are starting on a note of disbelief that re-emphasizes what disbelief happens at the time of making the complaint. If the judges disbelieve, why do you expect the police not to disbelieve? Because they are the people who are the model setters, the trend setters, the people who set a certain direction and a certain deterrence. So I think it's very important to sensitize the judges to these kinds of aspects. Another thing, they think that if sexual abuse happens, for example in the family, they think that it cannot happen in the presence of by a man if he abuses his daughter, that it cannot happen in the presence of his wife. They are making assumptions. We all are making assumptions. That is a serious. There are any number of children who will tell you that the sexual abuse happens in presence. Their sexual abuse happens in presence of their mothers. The mothers are also equally helpless. They are worried if they make a complaint that if the father is, for example, a government employee or working somewhere, he loses his job. How will somebody comes from a family where the father is alcoholic and just does not allow the system to function. And it is so important that at the level of lawyers, public prosecutors, judiciary, besides all the other sections, I'm talking now of the legal systems, I'm talking of the people who come within this legal system, so the police, and it's not only to be a one-off, gender sensitization program. That is the problem. There are gender sensitization programs like Anita was pointing out, or child sensitization programs, but you need it to be incorporated in the curriculum, because it's only when it's incorporated in the curriculum that it will get the seriousness. Otherwise, this is seen as a sideshow which you have a one meeting for, and as and when they please. If they think maybe these days they might be a little deceptive because there is all this noise, and which is what happens invariably with most of these things. And let me tell you, this noise will die down in a few days. We are talking of this jurisdiction issue. The last time when not Mahana, it was much before, there was this case when it came to bigamy cases. And the police said we'll do a zero, we will register it as a zero case and then forward it. In this state, this is many years ago when we didn't have we didn't have the other email and internet coordination facilities. Today in this day, they can easily register. In fact, they can communicate and get the to that case. But they had talked of it then. But you have so many cases. I know more recently of a child who was missing from one jurisdiction, and she hails from another jurisdiction, has been abused in both and shuttled between both the jurisdictions. So this talk of jurisdiction has also been there before, but so long as these things are not there as prescriptions, serious prescriptions in the law, they will only make these oral, verbal, I call it, like verbal diarrhea sort of, meaning just, making these assurances, but nothing really happening in terms of actual action. So the need, therefore, for us to have monitoring mechanisms. And talking of monitoring mechanisms, one of the mechanisms for monitoring, which was thought of by people like us and many others, was the Commission for Protection of Child Rights. That is meant to be the monitoring mechanism. And today the chairperson here was supposed to speak on that monitoring mechanism, but she has failed to come and she has not cared to send anybody else either. The question is, have they been monitoring the handling of crimes against women, which they are supposed to do? Or crimes against children. You also have the Goa State Commission for Women, under whom this also comes, because when it's a female child, it comes under the Goa State Commission for Women as well. Now, the Goa State Commission for Women has been constituted under the Goa State Commission for Women Act. The Goa State Commission for Women Act requires that when the Commission doesn't have powers to take action, or to make any changes in the systems or something, but they can advise, they can recommend what they require, and that has to be tabled in the assembly. Is it being tabled? Are we asking? Again, the role, as somebody said, that we need to ask. Are we asking why is it not being tabled? We really need to ask, because then the state has to give reasons. See, anyone can go wrong. They are the elected people are supposed to ask also. It's not like they could just blanketly accept, but they have to give reasons why they accept and why they reject also. They can't just wash it away and say, and not even table it in the assembly, or table it in the assembly and finish and not do anything about it. They are bound to act on this. So these are the monitoring mechanisms that are there, which we need to ask them what is happening with these monitoring mechanisms. The last time around, when the Mahanand case came up, they said we will have this meeting once in every 3 months, or it was in 1 month, I don't remember, where they would call women's groups, etc., and they would have an interaction. The police would have an interaction. But they had it for a couple of for a period of time. I think I do not think it happens anymore. And that is when they were also supposed to give answers to what have they done about cases so far, because they are otherwise not available when you want to call them to ask what has happened about this case, that case, especially when the perpetrator is somebody in position of power. Position of power means powerful person. I mean, every perpetrator, to my mind, is a person in some level of position of power, because that is the power with which he does this sexual abuse. But I'm talking of people in high political positions. I seriously think that we need to make a strong case for monitoring mechanisms. India is a signatory to the Convention for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, to the Convention on the Rights of the Child. There are obligations under these, and we have to be able to otherwise send a shadow report from civil society to say that these mechanisms are not being complied with, and that India has not even, India for that matter, I mean we are talking of Goa, has not taken the necessary steps to actually make it effective, whatever there is. I also want to share with you that I quickly went through the Justice Verma Committee report. It is a 600-page report which goes into various aspects ranging from the definition of rape and sexual assault, where today they have also brought in marital rape, etc. under this subject. This report somewhere refers to not getting the data on missing children or missing people from various police, including the Goa police. They have simply failed to respond to the query from the committee about what is it. So we need to ask them where are their databases, because that is where the accountability will also come. What is their data? And it's not simply that because there are more cases it means that they are bad. In fact, because that is another thing, they want to lower down the cases, because if we link the capacity of the police or the functionality of the police with the number of cases registered, to say that if they're so good that means less cases are happening, then that becomes a point for them not to register cases. So let us not link the two, but we have to take a serious note that they're not taking on board cases when crimes against women and children happen. There are other recourses also in the law which we can be tapping. For example, there is something like, there are many women who do not, or children who do not want to go through the criminal justice system. They don't want to go to the police, like many persons pointed out, many of the speakers pointed out in the morning also. So here you have, for example, if it happens at home and they want release, they want protection, they don't want this to happen anymore. It's happened, they don't want to go and have some punishment for the perpetrator, but they want protection. Then there is the Domestic Violence Act. The Domestic Violence Act is not only about abuse by husband against his wife, but it's also about abuse by son against the mother, by the father against the daughter, by the brother against the sister, by any male perpetrator against maybe in collaboration with females, but primarily the male perpetrators against a female in the shared household. And it could be anybody related by blood, marriage, adoption, who is residing in the shared household. So the Domestic Violence Act also has certain reliefs which even include an injunction to restrain that person from being in the house, the abuser. But that again is a very tough task to convince the judge, because the judge says, please stay. But hello, if he's not out, where will they stay? I'm not saying that we should not have a human concern about people, but where will they stay? It's as good as they not having to stay there, they being homeless then, if we're so concerned about where will he stay. So and therefore, above everything else, calling for a training curriculum which has gender, just like every other subject in the judicial training, and for sensitization of the judiciary also, besides that, and in periodic interaction. And then judiciary, and yes, police, public prosecutors, lawyers. We also are not really nowhere above board. So I mean, excuse me. Yeah. So yeah. With that, I throw the floor open for discussion.
I want to know, in this commissions for children's protection, women protection, where was this derived from in our country? When and with what motive? Secondly, Right to Education Act, when and why? Maybe, I think this is all going wrong. You're talking of law right now, but I have a feeling that we are still fighting, and I think the generation to come, my children and thereof also will still be fighting. Why has this started? Who started this law on children protection, ex protection, Y protection, and children's, right to education? These two main factors which we are suffering for on the general public.
For declaring Apna Ghar fit institution. It is not a fit institution. It should be declared, publicly declared a fit institution.
I think, thank you everyone for all the inputs into this session, and we move on to the next session.